Hey folks, Robert Haddo here. Today I'd like to see if I can simplify remedial exercises for us. Probably helps if we formalize what a remedial exercise is. I tend to think of it as any movement that either reduces the perception of dysfunction or pain or increases our tolerance to it. That's it. I tend to think of it that simple. So when I look at discrete movement, I break it down in terms of range of motion, resistance to that range of motion, and rate change to achieve that range of motion with that resistance. Basically, how far do you move, how much effort do you have to put into it, and how timely does it have to be? And that's for any one movement. So if we consider a case of, say, a patient coming in, let's go massage therapy 101, head forward posture, headaches, maybe some TNJ involvement, and I don't know, maybe a little bit of numbness and tingling down the arm or the hand at night. Kind of your common, I sit at my desk all day and I used to be active, now I don't do anything and I'm not sure what to do about it, and it's gotten to the point where it's interfering with my quality of life situation. So our go-to is the pec stretch, right? The doorway stretch. We want to open the thoracic chain, lengthen the pec muscles, shorten the retroscapular muscles, the rhomboids and the trapezius muscles, and voila. But where do we go from there? There's a lot we can do that uses that same range of motion to input more novel stimulus. So let's start with our pec stretch. We've opened up the arms in a cross-body movement. So this is cross-body abduction to end range. So that's our range of motion. There's not a lot of resistance here. We're not really doing much work. And it's a pretty slow movement. I don't have to crisply start and stop. It's just a basic one. We can add isometric holds at the end. We can add resistance through that range. We can make that range similar with a rowing style pattern. Basically the same as this. It's just pulling instead of swinging. That challenges a lot of the same stuff. We can go with our old school P&F approach, our hold, release, hold kind of approach. So I can move to that range and I can challenge pushing forward and see if I can go further into that range. Challenge pushing forward, further into that range. There's a lot of novelty we can add to that simple movement. And we can just build on that as we go. So what I tend to do with a patient running into something like this is I'll troubleshoot. I'll try to find what movements feel beneficial. And it doesn't have to be your standard simple stuff. It's more about what works for them. If they find stretching that with their arms down is more beneficial than arms up, then that's more beneficial to them. And we make a list. And you might note that it gets pretty quickly overwhelming. You can end up with a patient who has 40, 50 exercises. That gets crazy. I've had patients come in with just a small booklet of their exercises from physio where someone just printed this list off and said, go through it. And that's not reasonable. So now we have to make it bite-sized. And hopefully I can get the video cut to work here. Okay, so here we have my whiteboard. What I've done is I've taken just a basic office desk that has a sliding leaf on it, and I've picked up some adhesive whiteboard material, and I've just stuck it to that sliding leaf so I can slide this away when I don't need it, and I can slide it out when I do. And for my patients, for their home care regimen, if they have trouble remembering it or if it's more convenient for them, I'll write it on the whiteboard, and they can snap a picture with their cell phone. Hopefully they're not going to lose that. For today's video, we're talking about using a tic-tac-toe board. We're organizing remedial exercises. Let's look back at that example of head forward posture, TMJ, and some thoracic outlet-like symptoms. So if we're trying to encourage greater mobility, greater retroscapular control, greater opening through the shoulder complex, so greater retraction of the shoulder girdle, I'll draw out this whiteboard here. I'll draw out this tic-tac-toe board. And I might start in the middle with my pec stretch. Now, a pec stretch is a cross-body abduction range of motion. So I might find it beneficial to add resistance at the end range. So I can tell them isometric contraction at end range. I can consider resistance through to that range. So I can say rowing. And so now I have my pec stretch, my end position that we started with. I've added increased muscle engagement at the end range, and I've added increased muscle activity to get to that range. If I want to add a bit more control to that, if I want to make that a bit more nuanced, with my pec stretch, I can include, let's say, nerve flossing. And to go with that nerve flossing, I might go with, say, retroscapular and infraretroscapular control. So a YTIW routine or a cross-body abduction routine, especially elevated. So Y, T, I, and W. And that leaves me with my four corners. So on a day when I have nerve flossing, I've already got a decent mobility routine. I'm not going to try to encourage a lot more end range to that. That would get a little redundant. So I can say down here or here, I can put in dislocators for just general mobility. Now, if I want to go with something that's a bit more proper for TMJ, a bit more targeted for TMJ, I should say, nerve flossing and rowing, I can put rocabados. I don't know if I spelled those right. Whatever, it's not important right now. So I have rocabados and rowing, so I have retroscapular control, I have mid to upper cervical and jaw movement. For this corner, I have retroscapular control and resistance. I have general shoulder mobility. I can work on anything that I want that goes with those two things. The pec stretch it's pretty universal, so it's a wild card right now. So if I want to go with rowing and rocabado, YTIW and dislocator, I have mobility control, I have resistance. Let's go with some sort of an isometric. Let's go with a side plank, or let's go with a PNF pattern, actually. So a PNF pattern is a great exercise for us to go with because it covers a lot of bases. It's an end range mobility drill. It has variable levels of resistance. It combines pretty much all ranges of motion at the shoulder complex and has a great effect on the shoulder, head, neck, and scapulothoracic complex. And finally, for my top right corner here, I have rocabado, nerve flossing, I have dislocators and isometric contraction. I have a PNF pattern and a stretch. The PNF pattern, again, we can treat like a wild card. It gets so much done. And so let's go with just some simple suboccipital stretches. So this ends up becoming a pretty mobility day. So what I have now are 9 exercises that I've organized in such a way that they're a bit more manageable. It looks like a cluster fudge right now, yeah. But all it is a picture they take and they win a tic-tac-toe. So, okay, for today, mobility. I'm going to win the bottom left, top right cross. Okay, another day I might go more control. Another day I might go more resistance. So, where were we? Another day I might go more end range work, retroscapular. And so this gives my patients 9 exercises with 8 permutations of daily exercise routines. Instead of walking out with just a giant sheaf of paper that's overwhelming, that's mentally exhausting to process, they walk out with a pretty simple, basic approach. We can delete and add as they become redundant. If I find nerve flossing is no longer getting an effect, that's great, that's what we want. Okay, let's go to end range nerve flossing and movement exploration, so going off plane. If I find suboccipital stretches aren't working anymore, that's perfect. They're getting a more comfortable end range. They're accommodating well. So let's work on neck isometrics. Let's work on C-spine isometrics for greater strength through those same now stretched muscles. An isometric contraction at the end range for cross-body abduction, well, that's a pretty basic Mickey Mouse exercise, right? There's not a lot of challenge there. Let's work on changing rate. We have rowing already, so let's load up the end range of the row, and let's add a flexed to extended elbow to challenge greater rotator cuff involvement versus greater retroscapular involvement. I can play with this, and it makes my remedial exercise approach in the office a lot more approachable to me to manage with my patient, who is also finding it a lot more approachable to them to stay motivated day to day rather than feeling overwhelmed. Okay, so we're back. We've gone over the tic-tac-toe board. It's pretty basic stuff. Pick a line on the board, win tac-toe. Those are your remedial exercises for the day. And that takes a group of 9 exercises and makes it into something that can be readily accessed in a much more reasonable manner. Everyone has a life, right? Not everyone has 24/7 to dedicate to feeling better. So this takes that potentially overwhelming pool of exercises that can build up over time and makes it much more reasonable to pick through. And we just drop off the exercises we find less beneficial as people get better at them, and we add more difficult exercises. So if that pec stretch is no longer doing it, I might add a reverse butterfly to really challenge resistance through that stretch range. If I find that a pushing exercise is more beneficial, I might add single arm loading and twisting to engage more cross-body core, some oblique subsystem involvement. Then let's continue building those same kind of exercises. So as we approach tolerance, we build on it more. And hopefully as tolerance is increasing, sensitivity is decreasing. Back to our formalized definition of a remedial exercise, a movement that either calms things down or builds things up. I hope that helps. If you have questions, comment on this. I mean, this is something that I know a lot of therapists have a tough time with, and there's a lot of us out there who are really familiar with this. Make use of us. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks kindly.